Welcome to the Vital Mentality Podcast. I'm your host, Angel Munro. We're talking all things health and wellness and looking at ways to live a vital life. Short disclaimer, this is not intended as medical advice. This is just for general purposes only. So welcome back. Today, I want to talk about a chemical that causes lots of health issues, and you probably are chances of taking it in one form or another are fairly high, and most people don't know that they are taking it when they are. It is called polyethylene glycol, otherwise known as PEGs, which I'll use that throughout the presentation. And it comes under many, many different names, and it is in synthetic supplements, big brands, including practitioner-only brands. It's in almost all pharmaceuticals. It's in vaccines, the new ones especially. It's in beauty products, including like shampoos, conditioners, creams, lubricants, and it is also in food as an additive. But like I said, all different names. So it's really important to kind of get your head around this product because you can miss it. It's a known allergen. In 2016, there was a scientific review that kind of basically concluded that it's often missed and it's often misdiagnosed. Professionals, scientists, doctors, GPs, research scientists, naturopaths, nutritionists, all kinds of practitioners do not even know that this ingredient is a problem. And that's the reason why allergies and hypersensitivity to this chemical PEGs is missed. So this is a real problem because people will be, the more you're exposed to this chemical, especially if you've developed a sensitivity or an allergy to it, the worse health outcomes you can get. And if practitioners aren't aware that this is a problem, then, you can be going into your practitioner for help with a certain health outcome, and they don't even know that you should be avoiding this product, because this is how you solve the issue, is that you avoid the product. You avoid PEGs in as often as you can. Like I said, this study was in 2016, and we're now in 2026. And if you look it up, it doesn't matter if it's a government body or the TGA or in the literature, it will often get dismissed as being rare to have a sensitivity or an allergy or anaphylaxis to PEGs. But how can you really say that something's rare if it's if it's well understood that it is missed by many practitioners? Like I mentioned before, it was in the COVID vaccines, in different iterations. Like I'll go through in a minute how many different kinds of this chemical. It's basically based on molecular weight and how many different names there are. So either PEGs or the derivative polysorbate was in all of the COVID vaccines that were available in Australia. And as you'll see when we talk later, it is quite possibly the main culprit for why people were having adverse reactions when they did have adverse reactions. And it's always been hard to determine what was the culprit for those adverse reactions, because in all of them, some of the ingredients were redacted, so you were unknown. But as you see, as we'll go through all of this, it's quite likely that PEGs or its derivatives was the issue. And many people who are against the the COVID vaccine, they don't understand that that was the major culprit, and they don't understand that they're probably still unwittingly taking this chemical PEGs in their vitamin C or melatonin or creatine or magnesium or all of these things that, I'm not saying every single one, but it's often in a lot as an excipient, so as a preservative, in a lot of kind of, health supplements that are not so healthy. So it's really important for everyone to understand, even in people who are interested in health. It's still quite likely that if you're not really hypervigilant, that you could still be having this. You could still be having PEGs or a derivative of. Like I said, there's so many different names that it makes it really complicated it's not, once you get to know it, it's not so complicated. But yeah, there is evidence as well that the polyethylene glycol and its derivatives, they have a cross reactivity. So if you develop a sensitivity or anaphylaxis or allergy, having either is going to be a problem. I remember when the vaccine came out, and there was lots of people online, kind of bullying and hassling other people into taking it. And I remember there was a post that went around saying something like, I don't care what's in my makeup, and I don't know what the mechanic does, and I don't know what chemicals are in all the food, all the ingredients in the food that I eat, or the shampoo I use. So why would I care what ingredients are in the vaccine? And I always thought that was funny, because I think it's really important to know what's in all of the things that you're putting on and in your body. The general consensus of what health is, or what causes disease, is that it's germs, genes, and bad luck. That's the collective consensus. And I personally work from the terrain model, that, if you care for your inner terrain, then you're in good health. If you don't nourish it properly, you don't move it properly, you don't give it enough nature, sunlight, grounding, movement, and you add a whole lot of poisons in, and then couple that with too much stress and unresolved emotions, that's what causes disease, not germs, genes, bad luck. So yeah, there is this growing awareness now, especially you see online, around that toxins are a problem. And people seem to get really overwhelmed. Like, they just think, oh, nothing's good for you. Why does it matter? I'm just going to give up. It's too complicated. Nothing makes sense. I don't know what to avoid. And I saw, like, kind of as a result of this, I saw another recent post of a guy who's like, everyone just needs to stop stressing. Like, go eat all the seed oils, go out with your mates, have a beer, get microplastics in your balls. Like, just don't worry about this stuff anymore. And I kind of understand what he was talking about, because I think that people have almost put too much emphasis on health, where it becomes, like a real point of stress, which is obviously not good for you at all. But again, I think if you put the idea of toxins on top of already having that baseline where you think it's germs, genes, bad luck, and then you put toxins on top of it, then that kind of seems stressful, because you're like, oh, it's just coming at me from all angles. But if toxins the major culprit, as well as the self-care things that I said about being in nature and getting, nurtured through food properly, and, having community and stress and all that thing. But yeah, it's the toxins is really the biggest issue. And so if you just baseline know to avoid them in your building products, in your cleaning products, in your personal care products, in your food, and you've kind of set up that baseline where you're just not having those chemicals around you for most of the time, then I absolutely agree. Go have a beer with your mates, have seed oil chips on the weekend. I certainly do those things. And, you know, the way the state of the world is, you're probably guaranteed that there will be some microplastics in your balls. And you should not be worrying about all of that stuff if most days you're caring for yourself and you're being responsible for what goes on and in your body. If that baseline is there all the time, day in, day out, the odd day where you don't worry about it, or I mean, if you set the baseline up, you're not worrying about it in any way, you're just not doing it. So anyway, let's get into the thick of the problem with polyethylene glycol and, you know, why you should be avoiding it. So in terms of PEGs, some things are well understood in the scientific literature, and some things I might be making a link, educated link, and I'll try and differentiate when I'm kind of making a hypothesis about something, I'm making the link about something and what is actually well known. Yeah, so let's start off with the names. I'm not going to go over every single name because I'm going to bore the shit out of you, but it is important to kind of get the gist of how many different names it comes under. So because of molecular weight, it can have different numbers behind it. So it can be polyethylene glycol 400 or 3,500, or it might be PEG 300, PEG 200, PEG 40. It's also known as macrogol, is another really common generic name, and macrogol is often what you'll find as an ingredient list in supplements and in pharmaceuticals. And I think I did a post on, I'll try and put it in the links, on how to find out if this ingredient is in your supplements, which I don't think anyone should be taking synthetic supplements anyway for a host of reasons. But the problem, I'm not sure about the rest of the world. I think the rules change depending on where you are. But in Australia, excipients, so extra ingredients that holds the tablet together, doesn't have to be on the supplement bottle, and it doesn't have to be on the bottle for your pharmaceuticals either. And it can just be on the product information sheet that you have to go to the TGA to find. So this is something that I do a lot with my clients, is that we go over what they're taking, whether it's supplements or pharmaceuticals, and we do an audit to see whether things that they're taking might unwittingly be taking, ingesting these chemicals, other chemicals as well. But to me, polyethylene glycol is a major issue. So that's macrogol. So that's one that lots of people will be getting. But it's the same chemical. This is just different names. And yeah, depending on what application is, it's going to be in different things. So if it's in food, it could be under a number. If it is it's often used as laxatives. So some of the brand names are Miralax, Movicol, Moviprep. Carbo wax, as if it's been used for research or industrial use. What else is there? What? I've got to find you. Loreth. I think it's Loreth 9. It'll come up. That's often in shampoos, conditioners, that kind of thing. It's polysorbate. It's also under lots of different names and numbers. And like I said, there can be a cross reactivity, even though it's a derivative. So it's slightly different chemical structure, but it is known that if you've got sensitivity or anaphylaxis or allergy to PEGs, that polysorbate is also going to be a bit of an issue because they're so chemically similar. That's also known under different names, will also come under different numbers. So like polysorbate 20, polysorbate 40, it's in lots of like so-called natural products. It's otherwise known as tween, which can also have a number behind it, tween 80, tween 20. All of these, if you have developed a hypersensitivity to it, allergy or anaphylaxis, all of these are going to be an issue. It's known under different names as well. But yeah, it's often used in lots of, I said pharmaceuticals before, and vaccines, but it's also known to be used in ultrasound, like as a lubricant, because works as a lubricant. It can be in, toothpaste, mouthwash, shampoos, conditioners, personal lubes, all kinds of medication, whether it's cold and flu, pain relief, like mental health medications, cardiovascular. Those two are kind of an issue, and you'll see why when we get closer to it. It's also very closely related to polyethylene microplastics. So microplastics contain polyethylene. This is polyethylene glycol. They are derived from the same thing, from ethylene oxide or ethylene glycol. Sorry. So, they have the same backbone. So if we think about microplastics and the known health issues that are linked to microplastics, we've got microbiome issues, so our bacterial environment. We've got cardiovascular issues and inflammation, cellular damage, endocrine issues, so fertility, weight, diabetes. So that's just from polyethylene, the microplastics. But if we think, it's good just to keep that in your mind, that they're highly related. So if we think about those issues that plastics can cause, we can see that there can be possibly some correlations between how PEGs are going to react in the body. It is known that in terms of fertility with PEGs, there's been some analysis in animal models that's found significant reductions in sperm concentration, motility, vitality of sperm, as compared to the control groups that don't have any PEGs. And there's also been another study where they've found that it can cross into the placenta. So that means that if you're ingesting these products one way or another, that it is can possibly get into the baby because it's been found in the placenta. I think I mentioned before that it's used as a laxative. So, yeah, I guess you can see how there could be issues to the microbiome. And it is also used as a clotting agent to prevent too much bleeding, hemorrhage. So that's also important to note when we start thinking about some of the issues that PEGs may cause. Common side effects. So this is the known causes of PEGs. It can cause issues to the gut, like I mentioned before. So flatulence, nausea, cramps, diarrhea, rectal bleeding, so bleeding through the anus, basically. And I have definitely seen an immediate change in gastrointestinal, so gut symptoms from people when they've stopped taking supplements or pharmaceuticals that have had PEGs in it. PEGs can also cause rashes. This is also a known side effect. And also kidney issues. What else have we got? Kidney failure. And in terms of neurological issues, there's been quite a lot reported: seizures, tremors, obsessive compulsive disorders. Remember that they're in a lot of mental health medications, and a lot of these mental health medications have side effects of all of these things that I am mentioning. So is it from the polyethylene glycol, the PEGs? I'm not sure. But yeah, paranoia, mood swings, tics, headaches, aggression, anxiety, lethargy, rages, mood swings are all side effects of a lot of those medications. And this is a known side effect of PEGs. Yeah, and I think that's it in terms of the like commonly attributed side effects. So people can have allergy, people can have hypersensitivity, which basically is results in some of the conditions that we're going to see. And people can have anaphylaxis, which is obviously a very extreme allergic reaction. But I think one of the things that is possibly getting undiagnosed is when people are having a hypersensitivity, and it seems it doesn't really get processed in the liver. It seems to kind of just collect in the tissue, in the blood, and it's in the lymphatics. So basically the waterways of our body. So I think that when it seems to be when there is too much of it, that's when it seems to collect in certain areas, and you seem to get issues in the areas where it's collected, basically. So I just wanted to talk about COVID a little bit, because that was where we saw lots of health issues arise from afterwards, and lots of people having anaphylaxis and allergy and weird conditions afterwards. And it is known as well with PEGs that dependent on the molecular weight is the higher the molecular weight, basically, the more likely you are to have a reaction. And when it is injected straight into the bloodstream, that's when you see more issues. And that is well known. Even though that it is known that this can happen and that lots of people can have allergies, and it's often hard to diagnose if someone has an allergy. And it's also known that polysorbate, which is a derivative, also can be an issue, and that there's a crossover. When they brought the COVID vaccines out, the only alternative for people who had a PEGS allergy was to take there was 2 vaccines that had polysorbate in it instead of polyethylene glycol. So even for those people, there was still going to be a risk, no matter what they took, of having some kind of reaction or having some health condition afterwards. Like I said before, PEGs is used as a clotting medication, and we did see an increase in blood clot issues. We also saw so was it the polyethylene glycol? I mean, there's lots of papers trying to explain where they dismiss PEGs. And they say, oh, this couldn't have been PEGs. It's because this person had a pre-existing condition, or it's because of this, because of that. I think that if something is a potential issue, then you just absolutely stay away from it. And it's weird that, to me, that it's known that PEGs can do all of these things, but then when the issues started arising after the injections, PEGs was completely dismissed. Often, no, I mean, there's papers linking it. So definitely with myocarditis, it was linked a lot. There was a 2023 paper that thought that the protective, like, lipid nanoparticle sheet around the vaccine was that includes PEGs, was possibly the culprit for the massive uptick in myocarditis. But as we saw before, polyethylene, so microplastics and polyethylene glycol can be an issue for the cardiovascular system in general. So for me, that's a big question mark whether the culprit was PEGs. For all of the issues that seem to kind of uptick after COVID was definitely the one to blame. And to me, I don't think so. If you've heard me talk about anything before, you know that I think that germs don't cause disease. This is a really hard concept for people to get their head around. And if it is something that you don't know about, but you are interested in, I'm not going to talk about it in great length today, but I recommend reading a fantastic book called Can You Catch a Cold? It's by Daniel Reuters. I'll put the link for these books in the show notes so you can have a look at them. Can You Catch a Cold goes over all of the known, hundreds of contagion studies, and basically shows that no contagion study has ever been proven. So can you get sick by the fluids of another sick person? And no study has ever proven that in history. And that is just incredibly well researched book. If you're not familiar with this topic and you read that book, it will blow your mind. It was actually Daniel's work, maybe that in 2020, because I had done some workshops with him before he even wrote this book, that really kind of started to make me see how little evidence there is for contagion. The other book that I would recommend is The Final Pandemic. The two books go really well together because they go over more viral isolation and the genomic sequencing, PCR testing, rat testing. They go over all of these issues and show you how the science around that is also just shockingly bad. The other book I would recommend was What Really Makes You Ill. So that's an overall look at all of the things that actually do make you sick, as opposed to the genes, germs, bad luck hypothesis that modern medicine goes off. So they're the top three books to start with. And it's such a growing movement of doctors and scientists. I mean, even the ex-Pfizer boss, Mike Yeadon, after he started seeing all of these people's work, he came out and said, I just can't agree that viruses exist or cause disease. So this, coming from a Pfizer exec, is massive. And there's one more woman to check out, Christine Massey. She did the FOIA request, so Freedom of Information request. She's done it with almost every single government in the world, asking if they had an isolated virus for COVID that wasn't made in a cell culture. If you don't understand all of this, if you haven't read a lot yet, this might be going over your head, but I think people think that you can look under a microscope and see a virus, but that's not the case. You have to do this complicated cell culture. Basically they've never, without actually going through this cell culture process, which like I said, look at The Final Pandemic to see how flawed that is. They've never actually isolated SARS-CoV-2. So anyway, I kind of veered off for a second, but I just needed to point that out, because a lot of these conditions that I'm going over, it doesn't matter if it's myocarditis, Guillain-Barre, long COVID, all of these things are blamed on a virus. Even if people are saying, oh, it's a genetic issue, doctors might say it's spurred on by bacterial infection or a viral infection. And if you don't understand how flawed the science is around germ theory in general, it means that you miss the treatment that you need. Because say if the treatment is that you need to avoid this chemical, that's the major treatment, and you're not being told that, you're being given more medication that has more of this in it, kind of exacerbating things further. That's why it's such a important issue, so important to actually understand, how sturdy are these things that we think we know about health. Because if we're wrong, which I am certain that we have been wrong, it just means more pain and suffering for people. So one, long COVID, it's generally defined as you've got to have a positive test, a PCR test, and it's very kind of loose diagnosis. If like 3 months after you've been sick for at least 2 months, and you're sick for a really long time, no one else can work out what else is wrong with you. That's one of the defining symptoms, no other answer. And that you've got fatigue, shortness of breath, and cognitive dysfunction. So often people get depressed with that diagnosis. So that's how the World Health Organization defines long COVID. And PEG sensitivity has overlap. It's kind of often said in the literature that the onset's faster, but the same neurological issues, respiratory issues, sometimes skin issues, and gut issues, there is an overlap too. So if you're coming from the perspective that I am, that it cannot be as a result of a virus or a germ, then, and the people who are having long COVID had the vaccination, which, like I described earlier, gets right into the bloodstream. So this is a hypothesis of mine. There hasn't been definite studies, although it is recognized that there's a crossover. No one has done a definite study to say it was definitely polyethylene glycol that's causing long COVID. People are just saying it's COVID. I mean, there's COVID in the name, right? But there is definitely research that says that people who have long COVID have an increased sensitivity to PEGs. So you can see why to me there is a red flag. So the next thing is Guillain-Barré syndrome, which is a rare, they say it's an autoimmune disorder, and where the immune system damages your nerves, you get muscle weakness. People often get paralysis, and that is also not well attributed to PEGs, although that can be, it is known that can be, some of these things can be a result of PEG's sensitivity. So again, this is me making a leap. There was lots of people after having the vaccine that quickly developed Guillain-Barré syndrome. They were told that it was probably because they'd had the virus or they'd had bacterial infection. But, again, I don't think that that's possible. And if you disagree with me, that's totally fine. It's a really big topic, but if you feel something about it, I really recommend to read those books, because you may change your mind. So again, some of these symptoms are known to be caused from PEGs, but when it comes to Guillain-Barré syndrome, it gets blamed on the virus. And interesting that there was a massive uptick after the mass vaccination program. And just to reiterate, there has been studies done in 2016, and a couple done to 2016 that kind of just highlighted that there is a lack of awareness around this, especially in the professional setting, a massive lack of awareness around PEGs being an issue in the first place, a lack of awareness around how to work out if someone has a sensitivity to this, lack of understanding of the cross-reactivity between PEGs and polysorbate, or PEGs and other derivatives like microplastics. And that is known from those reviews that were done in 2016 that the more you have this chemical PEGs or derivatives of, the more likely you are to develop a sensitivity. So the best way to not have a sensitivity or a major health outcome is to not have as much of it in your daily life. And you may get into a really serious situation where you need to take, hopefully just for a short amount of time, a pharmaceutical. But if you've been unwittingly having it in your supplements, having it injected it into you for something that you didn't need, washing your hair with it, and then you go to need a pharmaceutical for like a health crisis, maybe for a short amount of time, like I said, hopefully, and you end up having a bad reaction to it because you've just been loading your body with PEGs. We're most likely not going to avoid it entirely for the rest of your life, but hopefully you will very, very, very rarely come into contact with it if you get familiar. And to me, I just think it's really important. I did a post on Instagram a couple of days ago. It was a reel, and it was because in the paper, in the ABC, they were talking about a herb, andrographis, and the Therapeutic Goods Association of Australia is querying whether this is a dangerous herb and whether lots of people are allergic to it or have anaphylaxis to it. And it is in a lot of mixed supplements that have like a few different things, minerals, vitamins, other herbs. And when you look up, like I said, how you have to go into the Therapeutic Goods Association when you're in Australia, you have to do this to see what the excipients, so the extra ingredients that are used as preservatives. They had macrogol, which is one of the names for PEGs, as an ingredient. And so, it's just interesting that like it's the herbs getting blamed when it is this chemical. And everyone that I've spoken to who have talked to me after seeing that reel, who have taken this popular supplement, which everyone thought was natural, they had no idea that this was in it. And I think the only way, because it is so convoluted in terms of all of the different names, numbers and everything, the only way to really start avoiding PEGs is to, talk about it. Because once you know, and it's not a problem. In terms of solutions, like I said, even in the literature, the way to solve issues from PEGs is to stop taking it. So if you think that you've got any of these conditions, the way to do it is to go over everything that you're taking and using with a fine-tooth comb, and then stop using the products that have it in it. That is definitely it. It's not really well known. Like I said, it's not kind of metabolized so much by the liver, but it seems to get kind of stuck in the blood and the lymph. So in terms of solutions, avoid it, and then if you're trying to clear it out of your body, I'd focus on anything that moves blood and moves the lymph. So I'd be doing, people think these things are small because they seem so simple, but they're not small when you do them every day and you avoid more toxins. So I'd be doing seasonal fruit, helps to move the lymph. I'd be doing dry body brushing, sauna, couple of times a week especially if you had serious things. Things to clear the liver, just to help flush through things flush things through the body, and herbs and foods that move blood through the body. And you definitely concentrate on herbs and minerals and food and movement that supports certain organs. So, if it was long COVID, you'd be doing different things too if you had cardiovascular issues. But definitely, if you have anything more serious like that, it is a case-by-case situation, and I'm here to help. You can contact me for a consult if you need. But it seems small, the things that I'm saying, but they're not. If you want to clear your body from pegs, you stop taking it and you do things that move things through your body, and do things to support your body, and you avoid toxins as much as possible. That's really the where it begins and ends, because real healing, it's slow, and you can see like all of the things that pegs is in is quick fix, and quick fix comes at a huge cost. Health is slow. Sun every day, movement every day, food without toxins in it that's seasonal and local every day, sweating, getting things to come out through the lymphatic system, exercise, movement, sauna. It's grounding, sun. It's simple. I think that was everything. Thank you so much for listening. I know that this was a big one today in terms of, it's kind of a bit boring talking about chemicals, but hopefully you can see how relevant it was to go through. So as always, thanks for listening, and until next time.